This is the Outliers Edge podcast, where we champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity by taking them to the edge of their comfort zone so that they can lead us to the edge of what's next. I'm your host, Niiamah Ashong. Let's do this. Hello there. Niiamah Ashong here, founder of Outliers Edge, where we champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity. Today, I have the wonderful privilege and opportunity to have a conversation with Catie Harris of Nursepreneurs. Catie, I would love to thank you for being here with me today. I'm really excited for today's conversation to see where it goes. We champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity, and everyone has their own different flavor of that. Can you share a little bit about how you are shaping the next era right now in your world?
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on. My vision, previously was to really create a space and a place for nurses who are in business to have like role models and just kind of a repository of inspiring stories. And that was really how I got started. And then it just kind of morphed into what Nursepreneurs is today, which is where we just help nurses to start businesses. But yeah, it all started with just needing role models, basically.
Okay, so I like this here because I'm hearing there's like an evolution that started out. You came up. When did that vision even start coming into place? So you had the vision. Well, let me even take it a step further. Let me take a step back further. When did you begin, like time wise? How many years ago did the initial vision come into play?
Yeah, I mean, it really came out like the 2015, 2016. So, about, some time ago.
Yeah.
But, I had been working with Walmart at the time. And I had been working with Walmart after working in the unit as a nurse practitioner for like 20 years. And, was kind of burnt out, and that opportunity had fallen in my lap. And when I was working with Walmart, basically my job was to find nurse practitioners to work in the clinics that they had. But in order to find the nurses, I had to go to kind of exciting places like the AANP, American Association of Nurse Practitioners, inner circle. So meet with everybody that in the inner circle of the nurse practitioner world. And then they would introduce me to other people. And then I met all these nurses who were like amazing. And I was just like, how did I spend so much time in the hospital setting, just kind of like in this bubble, thinking the only thing I could do is work in the hospital. And there's so many things that you could do. And I knew it like logically, but I didn't really know it until I ran into these women and men, and they were incredible. And I was just so like, wow, I was really inspired.
Yeah. So up until then, your career had been in the hospital, and then you were working for Walmart, and it wasn't until even after that it kind of opened your eyes as to just how varied the path could be.
Exactly, because I had met some nurses that had started their own business, and I was like, well, I want to start a business too, and I, just kind of, like everybody else, like, well, what can I do, and what path can I go down, and that kind of stuff. And I started out just like, well, let me start finding out what other nurses are doing, because I'm obviously not the only person that has this idea, even though it felt like it, because when you look around, I'm like, I must be the only nurse starting a business, but I knew it wasn't true. So I started my podcast, and it was really just about finding nurses who were in business and finding out how they came up with the idea and what struggles that they go through to get to where they were. Because from the outside, it always looks like somebody had this brilliant idea, they woke up, and the next day they started this amazing business and lived happily ever after. And, I've done like 120 episodes, and I've never, ever found that one time. So
Mm-hmm.
And it's certainly not true for me either.
Yeah. So this is really cool, because you talked about, I must be the only person who's thinking about it in this way. And I think it's interesting here with us as Outliers Edge. It's a bit of like a paradox where it talks about being the outlier, one of the only. But the point of this here is actually you're not alone. There's actually a number of us out there that have chosen to find success in ways that aren't the average or traditional way, right? And what I'm hearing from you is you had the viewpoint originally was like, oh, well, nurses are in hospitals. Like, this is just what they do. This is the average and traditional way. And you expose yourself to a brand new way of looking and say, actually, there's quite a lot of different ways that people are doing this. And then you took it a step further and you said, let's have a podcast about this. Let's find out more about what people are doing. Let's give more space to that. Am I capturing that correctly so far?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say too, when I first started the podcast, I just kind of dabbled in it. And, if I got to talk to nurses, it was fine. And then one day I'm like, look, either you do it or you don't do it, but don't half-ass it. If we're gonna have a nurse on every week, let's have a nurse on every week. And so then it really forced me to go out, and instead of like, if I happened to come across a nurse in business, I'd say, oh, you should be on my podcast. I actively went out and started searching for these nurses. And even to this day, I'll get people that are like, or the nurses are like, how'd you find me? I'm like, extensive research. I've been looking for you.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a little bit here, because I know one of the things about Nursepreneurs is like you really do help these nurses like launch their businesses. Like it's like I've seen testimonials of like how people come out and they're making tens of thousands of dollars and even more based on the processes and the things that they've done by following your steps. So I kind of want to go to that part of the journey in a bit, but I it's fun talking to you and starting in this place where you're like, I didn't even know this was available. I didn't know I was doing things, and yes, it was cool to have a podcast, and especially in 2015, 2016, that kind of timing there, like podcasting was just starting to pick up, and then to take that and say, okay, now I'm going to be serious about this. I think about beginning something when you've had an experience of it, you've been doing other types of work, and now you're choosing to be an entrepreneur, or choosing to be a nursepreneur. I would love to hear from you, like a bit of that, the transition points of like, oh, I'm taking this either more seriously or I'm believing. I don't know what the steps are. But can you tell me a little bit about your transition points as you kept stepping up your game in it?
Yeah. And I gotta say, it's hard because the transition, it happens kind of like over time. It's not like I decided one day that I'm going to think of myself as an entrepreneur. And it's kind of like when you're first starting your business and you're putting stuff out there and nobody's really buying, you're kind of like in that in-between stage where you're not really an entrepreneur, you're kind of a hobbyist,
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, no, it's definitely a tough road. And I was working academics. I actually was working academics, Walmart, and as a nurse practitioner on the floor. And I'm a single mom. So like any nurse, it's like let me see how many things I can carry at once before completely flop. And then, let me start a business on the side too. So, something had to give. And one of the things that thankfully gave for me was Walmart. They actually fired us all and, let us go because the clinics weren't working out the way that they wanted to, or we just weren't the right people, or I wasn't the right person or whatever. But I was kind of thankful for that one, because it took up a lot of time and it was preventing me from doing other things. But the money was so good that I probably would have like sacrificed the business to stay with something like the known salary coming in. So I feel fortunate that they let me go.
Yeah. Well, I like to call out this year, and you'll see me at certain points. I slow down in our conversations because there's a lot of really great elements of what you're saying that I think oftentimes don't get enough like breath in it. One, this took time, and there's a transition over time. It wasn't just like one thing that led into play. It's like what I'm hearing from you, and you even said it like when you started with the vision, you're like, it started, this is the direction that I was headed in. And over time, at different points of your journey, you were choosing to commit more and more and more, or to change and evolve it more and more. But it wasn't just like I came up with something immediately, I dropped the other 17 things on my list, and I was like, I'm going all in on that. That does not seem to be the case at all.
No, exactly.
Yeah. So and I'm feeling this shit because you brought up like academic, Walmart, nurse practitioner, single mom, and then like a business on top of that. And I think about the outliers that we lead, and a lot of them they're like both multidimensional and multi-potentialites. So they're involved in a lot of different things. They're like, I'm on the board, I have a full-time job, I have this on the side, I have this other thing that I'm. So like the idea of having like multiple projects in place is actually like I get that. I understand that. I before I came to San Diego, I lived in Singapore, and we were moving, and I'm like, there's gonna be so much things that are different. Why not change it one like by just a little bit more and become an entrepreneur on top of that? So I can get that part of the journey there. So you came out, you were having this experience, you had multiple hats on. You started out a podcast, and eventually you came to like a decision point of like, hey, I'm gonna like either take this seriously or not. And you chose, I'm gonna take this seriously. And then things started to evolve for that. And I think you mentioned like extensive research here. And I wanted to kind of tie in. Actually, no, let me put it in this way. Take us over the next 2 or 3 years from there, right? So you started getting really serious about the podcast. Tell me about how that evolved in your business. Tell me about the next 2 to 3 years for you.
Yeah. So I've started businesses in the past that weren't necessarily nursing focused, and talking to the nurses and listening to some of their struggles in the podcast, I was like, well, I could put something together. I have an MBA. I've had businesses before. I'm listening to all these issues. Like I can put together a program to help the nurses to get started in their business. So that was kind of the first iteration of Nursepreneurs. And I spent a lot of time and a lot of money putting together like a course that I could do. How do I put together the course, and then how do I sell the course, and going down that rabbit hole. The content itself was easy enough to put together, but it was everything else that was hard. So it took a ridiculously long time to do this. What should have taken me a couple of weeks ended up taking like 9 months. So, I finally decided that I put the webinar together. I had the course material, everything was put together. There was nothing else for me to tweak at this point. The only thing left to do was to try and sell it. So in January of 2017, that's when I did my first launch. 2 years of kind of like dabbling in this, finally launched the course in 2017. And it was very exciting. I had a lot of people sign up for that webinar. I had 4 people purchased, and I was like devastated because I was like, it was an epic failure. I didn't make $1 million. Like I've spent 20,000 to make 2,000. And, it's just like one of those, moments where I just, especially when you listen to people on the internet and stuff, and they're like, oh, like I said, I made $1 million and 2,000 people joined my course. And I was like, well, why did only 4 people join my course? And when you look at it, and I don't mean to go down the marketing rabbit hole, but the math was there, that would sustain it and could make it grow, which is what I ended up doing. But in the beginning, in the start, that was like, it felt like a loss. It felt like it wasn't a win, and that I was able to turn that around with my coaches because they showed me, like, even mathematically, how it was a huge win. So
can we slow down on that one in particular? Like I'm glad that you brought up like the first launch, because like people will go to nursepreneurs.com now and see everything, and it just looks like they see it, everything's like in full motion. But this is the beginning of 2017 is when you did your first ever launch with this particular business, right? What I recognize there's just different pieces that I wanted to pull out here to draw attention to. One, you had done business in the past. And so there's a part of you that had like some previous experiences that could be leveraged upon. Right? And in addition to all the other things that you had listed there from the academics and beyond, right? So there was past experience here, and I think that's important, because it wasn't like you're like, I can solve a problem, and let me leverage my past experience in that. And given that it still took you like 9 months, and I love how you said like when there's nothing left to tweak, because I'm like, yeah, eventually that's all it becomes, right? It becomes a whole bunch of little tweaks. And you launched the course. You're like, we had a good number of signups and such, and it came out to 4 people purchasing. And I really like to. There's an element of past experience, solving the problem, 4 people buying, and you hear and you read, and this is what we get sent. We're like all the successes, the tremendous successes that people have. I think a lot of time we don't necessarily give room to like the journey or what it took, what they had already built beforehand. So let me ask you here: you got to a place where you're like 4 people. With some support from your coaches, you saw like 4 people was enough of a foundation to actually build something. It was like, look, there's something here. Tell me a little bit about like the foundation you had been building then for that. So at that point, you had done 2 years of podcasting. At that point, you had been in the nurse world for a while. Tell me a little bit about just a little bit of that foundation, and then we'll continue on from there.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, and I will preface like that, the podcast started like I think 2016, and it had been very inconsistent until like 2017, 2018. You'll see like now we have a weekly podcast, whereas back then it was like whenever the mood struck.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, the course foundation itself really just was it was focused on getting the ideas out of the nurse's head. And that was, to me, and to this day, is still a really vital aspect of, helping the nurses to see how their expertise can be turned into a business model. So that was really the foundation of that course. And, like just giving them like you said, the space to realize that there's something there, that there's something that can be monetized if it's placed in the right package. So that was really kind of the foundation of that course. And then just really understanding that, to take it to the next level required me to really see that those 4 people as a win. And it's really, I teach my nurses that to this day, like if you can sell something to 3 people, then we have a math problem. Like, we just have to figure out the math equation here, and then we can do it, and we can make it work.
I like that. Like then we have a math problem, and it's yeah. There's something about it like that. I did actuarial consulting in my previous lives. So like when I hear math problem, I relax. I'm like, okay, this is just
we can figure it out.
Yeah, I'm like, we can figure this out. This has like you change a couple of variables, you're gonna get different, but it's fairly straightforward from there. And I think this is what I'm hearing from you. You just said like, like we can take it to the next level. And what I'm hearing from you is like this kind of iterative process that like a part of your journey where you're consistently making different choices to take things to the next level. You're like, all right, I was doing this. I had thought about it from this place. Now I'm going to play it at the level of bringing in nurses that are starting their own business. I'm going to do a podcast. Now I'm going to take it to the level of being consistent. Okay. We figured out that we can have a webinar and get paid for this. Now I'm going to take it to the level of like, how do we just figure out the math on this to make sure that the math works overall?
Right. Yeah. And to be honest, like, everybody wants to jump into courses and start selling courses and stuff, but, and maybe you can sell a couple, but I mean, it really comes down to people trusting you and, making sure that you're not just going to kind of run away or, so it can be very hard to sell courses in the beginning. And that's really what I had come up against. It's just hard to sell courses if nobody knows who you are and what you do. So, building kind of the brand on top of it became a huge priority, and, giving stuff away for free and just getting people to, like I said, having the podcast every week, that's a trust factor, right? Yeah, like if I just show up willy-nilly or whenever the mood strikes, like people won't trust that I'm a real professional business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. So let's go here a bit now. Let's fast forward now. So we were at 2017. Let's take it to this moment right now, right? Tell me about like Nursepreneurs. Tell me about, if you're okay with this here, I'd love to, we have a game that we play inside of MySpace called the Brag Zone, which is like, just let all your accolades out. Like, I'll put it this way. What are three things that you're really proud about Nursepreneurs right now?
I'm proud of, I mean, I'm most proud of the students that we've had come through. We've had students that ended up working with me who have done incredibly well. And then we have students who have started some amazing IV hydration clinics or concierge nurse businesses. Things that, like I didn't even know were a thing. We have one nurse who wanted to do staff turnover in long-term care facilities, and she can change, basically how they operate just with her process and stuff. And it's just stuff that kind of comes out from talking to them. Like doing chronic care management. I'm working with a nurse now that does clinical research associates, and helping nurses to get set up there, or corporate nursing. And it's just like everything that comes at me, it's like, it's amazing. And it's not, it's not me telling them exactly what to do. It's them articulating what it is that they want to do and putting it together. So like I don't take credit for their success or failure, because to me, it's like they're the ones that are doing the work. I think I just give them the space to do it. And almost like, and this is something that I needed. So I'm not saying everybody needs this, but also the permission to do it. And some people want that. They're looking for permission to do what they want to do. And that's where I think the role model comes in, because they see other people doing it and they're like, yeah, I can do this too.
You hit on something I think that's really important. The space and permission to do what they want to do. I think underneath every part of this conversation, that's been what's been in the back of my mind here, right? I talk about championing the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity, and it's not because anyone came out and like bestowed upon them, like said, like, you are going to be a chief champion that's going to lead it. You're going to do it here. It's like there's something that is like deeply burning within them to contribute in the world, right? It might start off, you know what, this is a problem that I want to solve. And it might start off small there. It might be like, actually, now that I'm seeing the impact that I'm making, there's no reason why I can't do this at a larger scale, or to help more people, or to do it, even if it's the same number of people, do it with a deeper level right? But that permission to do what they want to do. And I think I'm really enjoying this conversation, because the components of this for me is like finding the unconventional people who right now don't feel like they have permission to really do what they want to do. I invited you into the brag zone a bit there, because it's like, what do you do when you've been playing, you're the leader of your industry, and that there's even more that you want to accomplish, but most of the people that you talk to are like, either they're waiting on you to to say this is the direction we're going in now, or like they're like, oh, it'd be really lovely to have your problem. Like I wish I had too many people coming and asking for all of my time, or whatever it is, like that. And so I really want to, like, when you said it, it really struck me, the permission to do what it is that they want to do. And what I hear is that you have these conversations with these nurses, you give them the space to articulate and say, like, this is it. And then what you do is like, you have great systems, structures, ways of thinking about things that can help them turn that overall vision or desire, even if it's not even like a clean vision, and help them to see that more clearly, to put that into structure, to put the various pieces in place that takes it out of like an underlying, like, I want to do it, to like, it is happening and I'm making that come to life. Let me check in. Does that feel accurate? Does that feel like it's on?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And to kind of further that too, like in line with what you're saying, coming into a business, you're actually coming into a leadership role. And that was something that I did not appreciate in the beginning, because I spent so much of my nursing career just being kind of invisible in the hospital, and I'm the martyr, like everybody take credit for everything I do. And then, it really just started to piss me off. And I'm like, well, you don't have anybody to blame but yourself, because you've been invisible this whole time. So coming into the business role, when I say, oh, I understand your problem, I have a solution, and I'm almost expecting people to ignore me. And then when they start listening, you're like, oh, and that, oh my God, like, wait.
I have when you said I have my own visceral response, like, oh, okay. All right. I did say that.
Yeah.
But tell me a little more. So like, because I like, you're hitting on something I think is really important. Like, I really want to make sure that people get to see some of like what you're doing in the business. But I think for the remainder of this conversation, I'd love to just like focus on you as a leader, because like you have an outlying business, a business that's different than most others. You work with outliers. It was really wonderful hearing how like you're not teaching them how to build the same business over and over again. It's like, what is it that you want to create? Let's do what we need to turn this into a math problem and just give you the steps to make that come to life. But if you want to, and I can see how this is changing things. Like there are going to be some certain people who are going to create a business that works with top tier, very select group of people. There's gonna be other people who create a business that's going to democratize or open up a lot of opportunities for people who may not have been able to have had that kind of support or care, or that level of care at that point. So I see the I want to just let you know, I see the impact of what you're doing. I see the importance of what you're doing beyond just like, I have a business that's helping people create businesses. It's like you're working with a group of people where when they are successful and they're able to like have the financial freedom and they're able to bring their ideas and expertise out into life, they're making lives better for everyday people on a regular basis. I think I need to just call that out, because in my mind, I'm like, I know we're talking business, I know we're talking about your journey, but I'm like, I see the deeper thing that's happening here. And I'm learning, for me, it's part of my leadership. It's like, oh, I need to sometimes make sure that I'm actually articulating the level of depth and connection that's here. So thank you, Catie, for what it is that you do.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, and I mean, to your point, because you had said before, like leadership's not bestowed on you, and it's something that you learn. And if you had found me 10 years ago, first of all, I never would have come on this podcast because I'd have been too like nervous and stressed out about it. But at the same time, like thinking that your opinion is not important is something that, I mean, you can grow into that, and you have to decide. And that was one of the things. I mean, I did have one of those moments, and I think it was like, trying to remember when it was. It must have been 2007 or 8, like really a long time ago, where I had, the being invisible and being quiet really kind of mounted up into this episode that I had with one of my attendings, where I just kind of like freaked out on him, and he was telling me to do this, that, and the other thing, and I just had it with his leadership and not listening to anything that we were saying. And it just exploded at that point. And they sent me to anger management classes with, if you knew me, like, this is the most ridiculous thing in the world. Even my chairman's like, you seem like such a nice girl. Like, a nice, quiet, mousy girl. That was me. And then had this explosion, ended up in anger management. And when I got suspended and was at home, and I'm like, what in the world is going on? Like, this is not what I want my life to be. This is not what I want to grow up and be the problem child that can't speak or articulate or, is invisible all the time. And, I'd love to say like the next day I started my business, but it would be another, almost 10 years before I got to that point. But it was that learning curve of, just, this isn't what I want. And I have to do something about it.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that into this conversation, because I feel that there's one, we have different seeds that are planted along our journey. This is why I love like the idea of like an unconventional journey, because it's like you wouldn't have known that moment there had started planting the seeds of like, oh, actually I need to find ways to be visible, and like whatever it is that led to more and more visibility from you. There's also the component of like of, you said like when you're stepping into entrepreneurship, stepping into being a CEO, like you're stepping into leadership, and then so being able to go on a path to figure out like how do you be responsible for how you want to communicate it out into the world. And I think that this is, it's interesting because we'll talk here about numbers, but I think you really tapped on something that has been coming up a lot with me and some of the conversations I've been having with people in our world around visibility, and the element of visibility being like most of the time, most people talk about how do you get more people to an event, how do you be more visible, how do you expand your reach, so on and so forth, and there's another level of visibility, which I think comes down into like the vulnerability part. And this is where we're talking about here, where it's like, how do I, like, can I be seen? Can it be my face that's on here? Is this going to be video? Is this going to be audio? What people don't know, I'll have to tell them, like, we had a conversation before we got started on in this conversation. You said, it's just going to be video or audio. You said it's going to be video. And you're like, great, I have a spot for you. Like, you came in, you have a wonderful lighting. You have a great, like, everything there. You take this seriously, Catie. You take this seriously. And like everyone's on camera, but like, you're like, if I'm going to be on camera, let me like actually step into what being visible means. I'm not going to be in this place that has sufficient lighting, but doesn't actually let people see me. I'm not going to be in a place that's going to be where my camera has to like blur me out, or no, I'm going to be seen here. I really want to call that out because it's these small decisions that aren't necessarily easy to make at first, but like that speaks to visibility, that speaks to trust, that speaks to the level of commitment that you show up with as a leader. And I want to make sure that like I reflect back, like I'm seeing it, I'm seeing the effort that you're putting in. And it's interesting, like when you talk about like, hey, 10 years ago or more, like this is where I wasn't in the place where I would like if I was going to be seen, it was going to be like a volcano, and like you're really going to see me, you're really going to hear me, and then you're not going to hear from me again for a while. I really just want to just like acknowledge you for that, and call out the ways in which you the ways that you have chosen to show up. And I don't think most people, they're how do I say it? It isn't always seen what people are doing to make it look easy, to make it look natural, to make it all these things. But you, like, I see you making these choices, and I want to call that out, and just really honor you for the way that you choose to show up in the world.
Thanks.
Yeah. So let's talk here. I would like to stay on the element of like this, about the permission to do what it is that they want to do. The element of like being invisible, right? And really the elements of leadership, because I think that's the key components for me. What have you found, like right now, as you look at you've been in this business for a number of years, you have multiple programs, multiple offerings, you've helped out thousands of people through the work that you do. You've seen various areas where like you've had to like step into your leadership. I get curious about two things. One, we talked about visibility, and we talked about visibility and being invisible as one of those things. But like, where are two other areas that like you felt like, oh, I really needed to? I'm seeing if I want to ask that question. I'm gonna let it go. I'm gonna let that question go. Looking at where you are right now, because there are a lot of people who aren't at the beginning of their journey, but they're listening because they've done things differently in life, and they're like, I have been successful, I'm really good, but for the next level of what I need, there's a gap, or I'm trying to find out what that space is. When you're thinking about the next level for you, at like, where are the areas of like where are you seeing like the places that you're focusing on and building your leadership, or building in or where you're seeing like the greatest gains for you as it's coming up?
Yeah, so I see as more and more nurses kind of come into this space, it's not enough just to have like the business and put the business together. It is about building out their leadership, because I feel like as nurses, like that is not leadership in the medical world is just assumed. And this was another thing that used to tick me off. Like, as a nurse practitioner working in neurosurgery for 20 years, I consistently got passed over for certain roles. And, the explanation was always, well, a doctor has to do it. And I grew up with these surgeons, right? And I remember one surgeon in particular, I knew him as a med student. Then 7 years later, he graduates and he becomes the director of the cerebrovascular center. He's got no training whatsoever in this, has no management skills. His only accolade is that he's a doctor. And I'm like, well, I'm a doctor too. I have a PhD. So why is that? It was almost like a rite of passage, right? And so I found that very, very frustrating. It's something that it's not assumed with nurses. You have to kind of like break your back and be the best of the best of the best of the best, as opposed to just somebody who graduates in order to get into those leadership positions. And I find that very, very frustrating. And I think that's a key component of nursing that really needs to be groomed. And as more nurses come into business, I feel like that needs to be the priority, is one, making sure that they are visible, two, stepping into leadership roles, and three, just, knowing how to be kind of their best self in that role and to really make the impacts that they want to make.
Yeah. When you were talking about like having to break your back and having to be the best of the best of the best, there was some element that like really it made my heart jump a bit. And the reason for this here is like I can imagine it for a person that has like the job of being a nurse, right? I can imagine, like, if I think of a nurse, I'm like, yeah, that everything you're saying makes sense. And if I extrapolate that, I'm like, I think back to conversations that I've had with my parents. I think about conversations that I've had with other people who've been in environments where they're like, I have to break my back, and I can't just show up and just like, just get what is just deserved, or whatever, the respect, the level of power, the level of leadership, the ongoing opportunities, so on and so forth. I not only have to be really good, but like I have to be, and not even better than most, but I have to be the best of the best of the best. That that feeling really plays out for me. I think it's interesting because I think it's why I have part of these conversations here, because I feel like I like to say, why be the best when you can be the only, right? I feel like this, like there's competition in the best, and there's another space where you're like, if you're looking for the specific thing, I'm here, I got your back, and I'm the person that has you here. So I really do. I know we're having conversations about nurses, and that's been your world, but you're also speaking to this, like, some real challenges that I feel that people who are committed to making, who are committed to giving, to contributing, to making change and leading in their world, like also go through. So I want to call that part out as well, where I'm like, there's a universal element of this that goes beyond the nurses, and I'm glad that I can immediately see it. I can see the person, and I also had a visceral response to it. I appreciate those three things that you put out, and you talked to the last, but like, how can you be your best self in this role? I think that like when I look at it all, I think a lot of things come down to that. Right? It's like, what is your style of leadership? What's your way of being visible? You don't take out billboard ads, I'm assuming, right? No, you
no,
could.
I haven't. No.
Yeah, you haven't, right? But you chose podcasting, right? Like, it's the principle of, hey, I need to be seen, I need to build trust, and all that exists, but you found what is the best way for you to show up in that regard. And I really want to call that out. I realize as we're talking here, I'm realizing as I have more and more of these conversations, a lot of this stuff here is both what we're sharing externally, but I'm also reflecting back how I see you. And I have to learn, like, that's how I am my best self in these conversations as well. Thank you for modeling it. Thank you for being in here and being like, bringing in a model of not just the theory of what you do, but like being here to build trust, to be trust, so to not just talk about like, oh, it was harder to be, I could be invisible, but to actually bring in a real story of like a real instance that happened to you that like is not necessarily flattering, but it's real, and making that visible. Think like it's one thing to say it, and it's one thing to say you need to build trust, and it's another thing for you to be a kind of person who can actively build that along the way. And I thank you, Catie. I've had an amazing time talking to you here. I want to give some space to do two things. One, I love to end these conversations with something that like you're really excited about. You can talk about something that's excited about for you as a person, for you with Nursepreneurs. Just like let us know like what's the project, what's the opportunity right now that's just like really lighting you up. Can you share that with us, Catie?
Yeah, I'm most excited about our impact program and the team that I have built for this impact program. Like I brought on a couple of women that used to work on mega yachts, right? Like, I mean, talk about talk about a whole level of service that's unknown. Like the one woman was like, yeah, everybody on the yacht wanted this bottle of wine, so I had to get in the helicopter and fly and get this bottle of wine so the party could continue. And I'm like, all right, that's just not don't understand at all. But so I wanted, but from these two women, I'm like, this is what I want for my nurses. Like, I want a really high touch experience for them so that they feel kind of like taken care of, and that we really are right there every step of the way. And it's not just, hi, here's a program, go self-study and let me know when you're successful so I can claim your success. Like, I want to like be in the trenches with them and really know what's going on, have a lot of touch points. And, we've brought in a business strategist, and, we have all these different components that they can access. And so I'm really, really excited about this team. I have a closer and a setter, and their job isn't to sell, it's to listen to the nurses and help guide them to their right choices, wherever that may be. And it might not be us, and we're okay with that. So the team that I've been able to pull together finally after all these years, I am most excited about, and to share them with the nurses that work with us. So.
That's fantastic. If someone's interested in finding out more about this program and like, getting an experience with you and the team in this year, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, they just go to nursepreneurs.com and follow the links for coaching, and they can find out everything that we offer there. They can set up to talk to Audrey, who's awesome, and she will help them find what it is that they're looking for.
Oh, that's awesome. It's cool. I feel that with you throughout here. You're like, even when Nursepreneurs was starting, you're like, oh, I heard this and there was a problem and I went to solve that problem. And I wanted to, and I really hear like, even in this context, you're like, we just want to help you know what it is that you want. Because the permission is you can get anything that you want. You can do anything that you want to do. Yeah. If you like, you can do it with us. And we got your back every step of the way in more ways than you might even think, Yeah.
And step one is really defining what you want, because nobody knows what they really want.
Absolutely. Well, I'm grateful for you, Catie. If there's one insight that you got from anything in this conversation, or one takeaway that you'd like to, I call it an insight or an outside. If it's an insight for you that you like to share, in case someone else that's like in a similar position of you that can learn from something you just got from this, or an outside, which is something that you're like, here goes a takeaway that I'd like to have other people have, what would that be?
Yeah, I would like to emphasize the leadership point. Leaders are not born, they're made, and you make the decision if you're going to be the leader. You decide it, and then your path becomes very clear, and much easier than kind of like moving around in the dark and not knowing what you want. So
thank you for that, Catie. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the way that you show up. Thank you for making a decision to be a leader, and for leading onwards from there. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. We're just getting started. Take 10 seconds to think about your greatest insight from today's conversation. And if you're ready to go and bring this to a deeper, more applicable level for you, come and join us in an upcoming masterclass. Go to outliersedge.com/masterclass to be coached live and to bring your aspirations, your goals, and your challenges and have them handled in real time. This is high flame, high impact, high transformation. Go to outliersedge.com/masterclass and come experience your next level of leadership.